So right up front, spoiler warning for the entire series of Uncharted. I've never really come out and said it on this channel, if I can remember correctly, but I am a big fan of the Uncharted series. I started playing it about a year or two ago, and finally I was able to complete Uncharted 4, and let me just say, this was quite the ride. I'm not going to talk about every single detail, but I will give you some of my in-depth thoughts on the series as a whole. But let me give you a quick overview on my thoughts on some of these characters. Elena Fisher is a lot tougher than she seems at first. You're a dirty old man, Sullivan. Chloe? Yeah. Flynn is a backstabbing jackass. Sam is actually a really cool guy. Nathan Drake is one of the best characters in video game history. Nathan Drake's trademark line. Well, Uncharted has finally come to a close. It's really sad in a lot of ways. Last time I reviewed a video game was Batman Arkham Knight last year, and that was the end of that series as well. Is this going to be a common theme for me in video game reviews? I certainly hope not. As I said, I'm a fan of the Uncharted series. It's a ton of fun. Each game, I think, has gotten better and better and better as it goes on. Besides that right there, I also have the other three. My favorites, 2 and 4. 1's good. 3, I actually really like, but the structure does feel a bit broken up when you don't see certain team members after a while. Uncharted, I've heard a lot of people talk about how it's basically Indiana Jones and more so Lara Croft Tomb Raider in the modern day. I like to see it as more of like an Indiana Jones kind of thing. But basically, if you took Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider and combined it into one, you have the Uncharted series. And Nathan Drake I could see as maybe resembling Harrison Ford in some shape or form. Or maybe if Chris Pratt was playing him, I could easily see that. And some people have talked about Nathan Fillion from Firefly playing Nathan Drake. He looks the part. And if they do get this Uncharted movie going, which has been talked about for so long, who knows, maybe it could work out. But the plot of Uncharted 4 is about a few years after the events of Uncharted 3. Nathan Drake has been out of the game for a while. He's married to Elena, and he's a scavenger in the city that they live in where he scrounges up parts from the bottom of the river. But he feels a bit unsatisfied with his life. It's a very normal, quiet life, and he longs for the glory days when it was exciting. He was riding the line of death. To quote Tony Almeida from 24, "Some people are more comfortable in hell." Nathan Drake is one of those people. But then out of the blue, his brother Sam, who he believed to have been dead for quite some time, shows up and says, "Hey, remember the treasure we wanted to look for when we were kids? We have an opportunity here, but I'm in trouble. This drug dealer's got a price on my head. We have to find him and pay him off before he kills me." And Nathan has had some old repressed feelings over his brother's supposed death when they tried to break out of prison some time ago. It was about maybe a year or so before the events of the first Uncharted. So naturally, he'd want to help his brother out. And certain things go on where they hire Sullivan to help them out in this treasure hunt, and they encounter certain villains that want what they're looking for, which is a fabled pirate treasure by a man named Avery from the 1600s who led an expedition on a treasure hunt with other guys like Thomas Tew and Bonnie and various other people. This game has been in development for quite some time. It's developed by Naughty Dog, who gave us games like The Last of Us, which is arguably my favorite video game of all time. And if you guys want to know, am I going to be talking about The Last of Us? One day. One day. So naturally, I was curious to see how this was going to pay off for Nathan Drake, but encountered a few developmental bumps along the way. Certain members of the creative team were pushed off the project. They kept pushing the release date back. At one point it was for April of 2016, but then they pushed it to May of 2016, which made me go, how much longer do we gotta wait for this? And I was a little bit nervous at first when the start menu came up and it doesn't have the classic Uncharted theme. It just showed a skeleton going, in an ominous tone going, So it made me go, okay, what's going on here? But then I started playing the game. This game is really great, and it's a great conclusion to this series. It's that classic Uncharted adventure that you'd want to see. And this is probably the best Uncharted game since Uncharted 2. Now before I go back into the story details, let's talk a bit about the technical, visual aspects of Uncharted. The first thing to notice right off the bat is the visual look of this game. It looks stunning. The details in the land, the mountains, the grass, the weather conditions, and the facial features on the characters, just like The Last of Us, it looks real. A couple times I actually forgot that this was a video game, and that's saying something to the visual effects artists that worked on this game. Well done. And the scope of this game is bigger, and not in terms of like being bloated or anything like that. It feels like you're in a real world, and when you go into certain areas and you find certain treasures and items and you see certain areas like a building that's abandoned, or you see certain people interacting, you feel like you're in the real world in a lot of ways. Probably the best vacation you'll ever take without having to leave your couch, as Jeremy Johns would say. There's one shot where you're riding in this Jeep with Sam and Sullivan, and you get a good look at this old volcano, and the camera just kind of zooms out, giving you a big angle look at the volcano. My jaw just dropped. I went, wow. A similar effect to The Last of Us. You look at certain imagery in this game, the surroundings and everything with the buildings and the way the land looks in the years since the apocalypse happened. It's really something. I mean, it's hard to put into words. You have to play this game, or at least watch the gameplay footage on YouTube. I'm sure more and more is going to come out as the weeks go by. Check it out. It's really worth seeing. If you're into visual stuff, you're going to like what you see here. Gameplay-wise, Uncharted 4 brings back that classic stuff that you see from the Uncharted series. This is a little nitpick I have with some of the gameplay sometimes. When you're playing it on easy, sometimes the difficulty level just fluctuates to hard or extremely difficult. You'll be in a certain area, you're crouched behind cover, you're trying to get a shot off at your enemy. You'll aim your weapon at your target, but for some reason when you point it at the head, they just duck. The computer knows when you're aiming at the enemy, and it just tells the enemy, duck, they're going to shoot you in the head. You did not know that I was aiming for your head. You would not have done that in real life. Come on. And there are times where it can get a little frustrating when the enemy surrounds you and it overwhelms you. No different in this game. But one thing I also really like with Uncharted 3, they add a few extra elements to the gameplay. Like, you get to drive a car, a Jeep, which is a ton of fun, and you also get to swing from a rope from one edge to another. It's really, really fun. But it's a little hard to get used to at first. There were a couple times where I actually got really overwhelmed because once I swung from one place to another, I would go up to a certain area, and then I realized I had to swing again, and then after that I had to swing again. And there was one instance where I was actually hanging from a tree that was hanging from above a waterfall. I died at least 5 times in that sequence. I wanted to claw my eyes out. And this is another common thing in the Uncharted series. When Nathan Drake gets onto something, it starts to fall apart. And then when he jumps to a certain area, he falls down and it keeps breaking apart and he has to be really fast to climb up. It adds to the tension, I get it, but after a while, I just go, oh my god, this is getting ridiculous. And there's one thing that I wish they would have kept in this game. It was introduced in Uncharted 3. When someone throws a grenade at you, if you just time it right, you get to pick up a grenade and throw it back at your enemy. I wish they would have kept that in this game, but whatever. It's just a small nitpick. And there's also certain puzzles that you gotta solve in this game, such as riddles, things that you see in a painting somewhere, or on a wall in a clock tower, or maybe even a giant temple in regards to a certain map to find the treasure, or find another clue to the treasure. It requires you to use your brain. I mean, I have no problems with that personally, but there were a couple times where I really, really had to focus myself, especially in this one instance where you gotta spin these blocks on this wooden pallet, where you have all these paintings of all these pirates that went on this expedition with this guy Avery. It was a little hard to figure out for a while. I had to really think about that, and I had to go back and forth with Drake's notebook to figure out what was what. So keep that in mind. If you have a problem with exercising your brain in a situation like this, you're going to really have to adjust to it. Another thing I forgot to mention is that you get to slide through the mud or on a rock, like a rock slide. And if you time it right, when you jump, you'll make it to the ledge. But if you don't and you jump too early or if you jump too late, it's game over. And you also got hand-to-hand combat, which is a little hard to figure out at first, because when someone grabs you in a chokehold and they try to knock you out, it involves some button mashing, like mashing the triangle button, and it can be really overwhelming when there's more than one person right next to you. Back to the puzzles, there are a couple times where it was a little hard to figure out, particularly in a clock tower with this big bell that makes a loud noise every time Nathan Drake pulls the lever to a certain point. It's one of those things where you have to look inside Drake's notebook and figure out from the visual clues how it goes. It's not like crazy hard, but again, it requires you to exercise your brain. It was hard to figure out, admittedly, like where to go and how to solve a certain puzzle. A few times I just went, how do I... Okay, it's like this. But now that I've talked about the technical and visual aspects, let's talk about the story and the characters. First of all, the actors who played these characters, Nolan North as Nathan Drake is great as this character. I really can't see anybody else voicing this character. Nathan Drake is, in a lot of ways, like a mashup of Harrison Ford and Chris Pratt. He's a smartass, he'll pop jokes at somebody, but he has a serious side to him and a caring heart underneath. He cares about the other people around him, like Elena, or Sully, or even his other friends like Chloe and Charlie Cutter. And he cares for his brother Sam very deeply. And you could see it in his performance, especially, like I said, with the facial subtleties and the visual work. And it's a lot of motion capture acting with these characters, which is something that The Last of Us did with Joel and Ellie and the other characters in that game, and that's becoming a common thing nowadays with games like this. And it wouldn't surprise me, because it actually allows the actors to physically act in their roles in certain scenes, particularly the cutscenes. And if you watch any of the behind-the-scenes footage of games like this, like Uncharted or Last of Us, they wear some pretty ridiculous-looking suits, and that's the thing with motion capture anyway. But hey, it works somehow, so can't really blame him. And Nathan Drake has really come a long way at this point. He misses the sense of adventure and fun, and he wants to go back to it, especially after his brother comes back and begs him to go on one more last hurrah. But he's gotten to that point where he actually doesn't want to do this anymore after he finds out that an old friend of theirs, a man named Rafe, who caused a deal to go south on them when they were locked up in this prison to find a certain map, wants the treasure and is using Sam as a bargaining chip. And it turns out that the drug dealer that Sam said that helped him break out of prison is dead. So Nathan feels betrayed by this, and he decides that he doesn't want anything to do with the treasure anymore. And it's something that Uncharted 3 had brought up. Like, Sully, Elena, and Chloe all told him, when are you gonna let this obsession go, man? It's gonna get the better of you. You are not invincible. And at this point, it's finally got to him, especially since he's been out of the game for so long. Especially after it nearly cost his marriage with Elena. He lies to her, telling her that he's gonna take this job that his boss is offering to him at work. And somehow she finds out, and when she sees the obsession awoken in him again, she says, "Screw you. I'm out of here." But then after Sully convinces her otherwise, she does find him eventually in Madagascar. And it's at that point when Nate confesses to Elena about his brother, who actually he never told her about. And that's another reason why she left him. And I also really like Elena in this series. It's easy to look at her as just some pathetic kind of reporter type, and she could have easily been the typical damsel in distress. But as Nate says to Chloe in the second game, she's a lot tougher than she looks. And she continues to prove that in this game. She can hold her own and take care of herself, but she's not afraid to rely on others for help. And I really like the interplay between her and Nathan. You really do get a sense that they care about each other and that they love each other. And it doesn't feel cliched. It feels natural. You buy their relationship. And also Sully, or Victor Sullivan. What a guy. You're a dirty old man, Sullivan. I was sure they'd kill you, kid. One of those sidekicks who's ever so loyal, even when things are going haywire. And then you got other characters like Chloe, who's not exactly like Elena, who wants to settle down. She loves the adventure just as much as Nate does. But unlike Nate, she actually is meant for that life, so she continues to go on with that kind of lifestyle. And you last hear from her in a letter to Nate saying, hey, if you're up for it, we got a job for you. Just say the word, and I'll come pick you up. And I also really like the character Sam in this game, who's voiced by Troy Baker, who's also the voice of Joel in The Last of Us, and Sergeant Matt Baker in Brothers in Arms, which was the first game I ever played where I actually felt an emotional connection to those characters. I might talk about that one day. And he's also the voice of Harvey Dent, Two-Face in the Arkham games, and the Joker in Arkham Origins, the young Mark Hamill Joker in that universe. This guy is a great actor, and possibly one of my favorite actors working right now, even though he's a voice actor. Hey, he's got a great voice, man. Give credit where it's due. And he sounds like Nathan Drake's brother. I mean, it sounds like a Nolan North kind of voice, but you could still tell it's Troy Baker. I really like Sam. At first, I was a little bit put off by him. He's a little too obsessed with finding this treasure, even more so than Nathan Drake ever has been with finding this other stuff. But you do grow to like him after a while, especially when you see the stuff that he goes through throughout the game towards the end. And I like the flashbacks to when they were kids, like how he would help Nate break out of that boys' home that he was living in when their parents split up and went away, which also shows you just where they got the idea of Nathan Drake being a descendant of Sir Francis Drake. The game never says specifically if he is a descendant of Francis Drake, but it is hinted as a possibility. It's never explained fully, but it does let you play around with the idea in your head. Because a lot of people tell Nathan Drake, and even Sam, hey, Sir Francis Drake didn't have any heirs. Well, sometimes history can be wrong. And it's true. We don't know exactly all the details that have happened to certain historical events. Every time we hear somebody give their account of what happened, it's a little bit different from what we usually hear. And not to mention that this game series also has some really great villains in here. I mean, we got Rafe, which he's probably my second favorite villain in this series. You get a good backstory with him and Sam and why he feels the way he does in regards to finding this treasure. But probably the best villain that the series has to offer is Zoran Lazarevich. He's menacing, he's terrifying, and his obsession with finding the entrance to Shambhala makes him crazy evil. In the first game, you got guys like Roman and Navarro. They're fine. They're suitable villains for that game, I guess. And then in the third game, you got Marlowe and Talbot. Talbot is one of those characters that you just love to hate. He's got this smug grin on him half the time. And also Marlowe. I gotta say, if Marlo ever appears in the Uncharted movie, get Helen Mirren to play her. She looks like she could be played by Helen Mirren. Besides Marlo and, to a certain extent, Rafe, there's not really a whole ton of crazy character depth to these villains. It's similar to the Indiana Jones series, where they see the power that these artifacts can behold and they're just entranced by it, that they will do anything and they will pay through the nose to get it. And in that respect, it actually plays on the idea of the supernatural being controlled by humans and how they could all blow up in your face. Not to get too philosophical or anything, but I do like how, in a similar way to Indiana Jones, it addresses the idea of what could happen to a person if all they want to do is control the supernatural rather than surrender to it in a way where they do want to help it. Nathan Drake, in a lot of ways like Indiana Jones, is a biblical hero or a spiritual hero of sorts. He's interested in the supernatural, but he in no way wants to control it. Now, as far as the way this game ends, and since I mentioned a little bit about history, I appreciate how this game actually takes on some legitimately historical accurate ideas, particularly the El Dorado story that's been told to death many times, but they spin it in a different way where it actually makes it interesting. They mentioned Marco Polo in the second Uncharted game. Marco Polo was a real person, so there you go. Uncharted 3, they mentioned Sir Francis Drake, like they do in the first Uncharted game. In this one, they mentioned the pirates, like I said before, Avery, Thomas too, and Bonnie. But I was looking up some of these people because there is a scene where you go into these rooms and you see the paintings and portraits of all these pirates that took on this adventure. And I was looking up some of their names. Is that a real person? Oh my god, that was a real person, and he actually was who they say he is in the game. When it comes to historical stuff like this, it goes to show you that the developers of these games really do their research. But back to the character and story, leading up to this game, I actually wondered what was going to happen to Nathan Drake. Is there going to be heroic sacrifice of some kind? Is Sam going to die? Is Nate going to die? Is Elena going to die? Is Sully going to die? Usually a finale like this would be tempted to kill off some major character and make it very emotionally powerful. Sometimes that doesn't always work. Nate and Rafe have a big sword fight on the Avery ship, which is trapped in a cave, and Sam is trapped under this beam, and he can't get out of it, so Nathan and Rafe fight it out, and when you beat him, this big giant clunk of treasure falls on Rafe, killing him. Nate is able to save Sam, and they escape the ship as it blows up. Sam and Sully team up as a new form of treasure hunters. Nate goes back to his normal life with Elena, but it's pretty clear that Nate misses the adventurous life, and Elena clearly sees that, so she says, let's take the Malaysia job. She buys the company that Nate works for, and they decide to legally go on these adventures because they're clearly meant for that kind of life. And right there I thought, okay, this is where the game's going to end, and I'm actually feeling really sad but happy at the same time. But then an epilogue starts, and you see this young girl in this house. She's calling out for her mom and dad, and at about a minute or so it hit me. I went, that's Nate and Elena's kid. They have a daughter now, named Cassie. She walks over to this house on the beach, from her house into another house, which I guess is their second house, I don't know. She opens this cupboard, and she sees all the pictures and all the artifacts from Nate and Elena's previous adventures in the other games. Nate and Elena come home, and they see what she's done, and she goes, where did you get that? Nate and Elena decide it's probably time that she should know the truth. As Nate's telling Cassie about the adventures that they went on, Elena takes a look at this old book that Nate's mom used to have about Sir Francis Drake with the greatness from small beginnings saying that has been echoed throughout all these games, and she puts a picture of her, Nate, and Sully from the first game on top of the book, and she catches up with Cassie and Nate, and the camera just focuses in on that picture, along with the picture of Sam and Nate from when they were kids, and it fades to black, and the credits roll. The whole time that this game was wrapping up, it's a cliche thing to say with this kind of thing, but it was very bittersweet. It was sad that it was ending, but it felt happy because I felt this is probably the best send-off you could give to that character. You don't need to do something dramatic and big and emotional. In a way, it was emotional, but he actually had a chance to live a happy life. Even if he's going on these crazy adventures once in a while, he can finally have what he wants, a life with Elena and a kid. And Sully and Sam, they're happy with their lives, and they talk with Nate every once in a while. I think this goes to show you that this is one of the best game series that's ever been put into the video game world. It's a great conclusion to the series, crazy thrilling adventure, and Naughty Dog, great job guys. And if the rumors are true, and you're making a Last of Us 2, please, please make a Last of Us 2. I really, really want to see another game in that world again. One day, I'm going to talk about that game. Just got to get in the right mood for it. Well, Thank you guys for watching this video. Stay tuned for my review of X-Men Apocalypse, which will be coming up very soon. Be on the lookout for a season review of The Flash Season 2. Really looking forward to talking about that finale. Thank you guys once again for watching this video. Comment below and tell me what you thought of Uncharted 4, and what's your favorite Uncharted video game of all time? 1, 2, 3, or 4? My personal favorites are 2 and 4, but I like the others as well. The entire series as a whole, it works for me. Let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you guys next time.